You've used me, you've abused me, you've ignored me, you've pushed me, you've burnt me out, and gave me this total rant, which was totally true, by the way. And I could feel physical tears coming down this unconscious body. And I just felt so ashamed because everything this voice said was true. I had not honoured and really respected what this physical vessel is. I felt so sorry. I felt so ashamed. And I actually said to this voice, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Please give me one more chance. Hi, I'm Josie Thomson, and this is my NDE story. I had my first NDE in 1991 when I was 24 years old. And at that time, I'd never heard of a near-death experience. I had just been diagnosed with stage 3 malignant cancer, which required an immediate second surgery. And as a consequence of that, I had lost a lot of blood and I was unconscious in intensive care. And whilst I was in this coma for a period of, I think it was between 1 and 2 weeks, I had my first NDE. And essentially what happened was that an aspect of my conscious awareness actually left my physical body. And I was actually floating up at the ceiling looking down at my body. So I had full awareness that I was here looking down at me in the bed below me. There was no judgment. There was no assessment about the situation. There was just pure awareness, and it just felt really serene, really blissful actually, just this floating sensation, just pure witnessing without any judgment at all. And I noticed on the screen that I'd flatlined, so my physical body had died, and the nurses ran into the room and tried to revive my body. And at that time, all of a sudden, I heard this really big male voice boom into my left ear saying, "It's not your time yet." So with that, I was back into my physical body. And then the same thing happened again the following day, where I floated up on top of the ceiling, looking down at my body. I flatlined again. The nurses came in, revived the physical body. The male voice again demanded, "It's not your time yet." So I was back in body. And it was funny because when I regained consciousness, I could tell you for the whole time that I was in coma, who had visited me, what they were wearing, where they were seated, what they said to one another. I heard every single conversation, even though the physical body was unconscious. And then once I did come out of the coma, I had this awareness of the experiences of the near-death experiences, but I couldn't make sense of them because, as I said, I'd never heard of a near-death experience. Was it made up? Was it a dream? Was it a consequence of all the morphine that my body was pumped up with? I didn't know where to go or where to have the conversation to even start to explore it. I tried to dismiss it. But what I did do, because I had just been diagnosed with cancer, and in those days, cancer was not that common. You know, in the early 90s, you barely heard the word cancer. And if you did, there was this automatic assumption that it led to death. So there was a great fear associated with that word. And suddenly what I realized, there was this willfulness that awakened within me, that I just wanted to know, what is cancer? How do you get it? Why did I get it? How do you heal it? I had so many questions. And this is the time before the internet, believe it or not. I'm older than Google. So I went out and bought every book that I could about cancer to try to understand it. And so there were 17 books, I think. And one of the books I picked up was one that was written by Louise Hay. And in that book, it was called You Can Heal Your Life. And there were stories about the people that had experienced near-death experiences. And all of a sudden, I was reading about the same experience that I'd just had. So all of a sudden, I'm like, I didn't make it up. I'm not going crazy. I'm not mad. This is real. And I had a community that I could plug into and actually talk about it in a safe way without feeling like a freak, you know. So that kind of led me on a very holistic approach to my healing. And I became much more sensitized to the signals and the energy of my body and what my body wanted versus what I was being advised to do by supposed experts. And that's when I really started on this spiritual path. I was very much religious before that. But this is when I kind of awoken to a more broader idea of what consciousness is really all about. Fast forward many years now, and in 2009, Christmas Eve, I was diagnosed with a lesion on my brain that required surgery in January 2010. And I had been recommended to go and see a spiritual healer based in Sydney, Australia, and I live in Brisbane. So I rang this woman. Apparently she's some kind of a psychic healer. I'd never heard of a psychic healer before. And she does something called trans-channeling. And again, I'd never heard of that before. And it's essentially where spirit talks through her body. So her consciousness leaves her body and spirit comes into her body and actually channels through her. And anyway, I made an appointment to go and see her. And the first voice that came through this woman's body was a male Asian voice. And I had been studying Reiki, and it was essentially the doctor that had invented Reiki. And he had advised me about how to approach my healing journey. And so I took all that information in. And then the second entity that came through her body was a big booming male voice. And the second it started talking, every hair on my body stood up. And I grabbed hold of that chair because I was like, oh my God, I recognize this voice, And this voice essentially guided me about how to approach that next healing journey, and that I would be given a choice to either return to his choir, because that's where I came from, or whether my work here on this planet started in earnest. And I honestly didn't know which way I was going to choose. Essentially, I did wake up from that surgery. I realized what my consciousness had decided, and I've been walking that path much more consciously since then. Then in 2023, I experienced my latest near-death experience. At this stage, because of the brain scarring that I had from that surgery, which was starting to spread now, it was actually leaning on some nerves that was affecting the whole right side of my body. And as a consequence of that, I was in significant pain. And the neurosurgeon had tried every kind of trial therapy and, different medications that they knew of that might be able to help me. Nothing worked. So he decided that there was a new therapy that was made available for pain management, and it was using hospitalized, supervised ketamine treatment. I did some research. I was a little bit concerned about it, but I was assured it would be okay, and I was starting on a very low dose. And that therapy actually worked. So for 6 months, I was pain-free. It was wonderful. However, when the pain returned, the doctor suggested we go in for another treatment. And because I'd had such a successful experience the first time, naturally I leaned into that opportunity. So I went in. However, this time, the pain medical doctor decided to start me on a higher dose than what I had finished on the first time. And intuitively, I said, why do I need a higher dose when I was very successfully treated on a much lower dose last time? And the response was, we want it to last longer, so we want to start on a higher dose. And part of me really surrendered my own sovereignty, didn't trust my instincts, and said, okay, well, you're the doctor, you know what you're talking about, you're the expert, I trust you. 2 days later, my body went into toxic shock because I had been overdosed on the ketamine and my liver just couldn't handle it. I flatlined and experienced my last near-death experience. This experience was really profound. What I saw and had whole conscious awareness about was I knew that my physical body was totally unconscious. But then there was another aspect of my awareness that was completely awake, and I could see this beautiful golden grid rising up out of my body, and this white torus field coming into the room to collect this golden grid. And I was observing this, and all of a sudden I interrupted the scene, and I said, wait a minute, am I dying here? And I realized that that was what was happening. And I said, I haven't said goodbye yet. And in an instant, I was able somehow to leave that room in my conscious awareness, go and find my father interstate in his garden, my mother in her kitchen, my sister in her house, my brother in his car, my 2 children on the Gold Coast. And I was able to say goodbye to all of them. So I was kind of here in my unconscious body, in this in-between state, watching this suspended animated scene of the soul and the torus field. And I was able to leave and be in these whole other spaces all at the same time, at the speed of thought. I think it was the speed of love, actually. And I was able to return to this scene where I'm watching the light and the grid suspended. And then all of a sudden this other voice rose out of nowhere and said, not so fast. It's not you that gets to decide when to tap out. It's me. And all of a sudden I was like, who is that? It was pretty an intimidating voice. It was feminine, and I recognized her straight away. It was actually the voice of my body. And what she said was, you've used me, you've abused me, you've ignored me, you've pushed me, you've burnt me out, and gave me this total rant, which was totally true, by the way. And I could feel physical tears coming down this unconscious body. And I just felt so ashamed because everything this voice said was true. I had not honored and really respected what this physical vessel is. And I felt so sorry. I felt so ashamed. And I actually said to this voice, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Please give me one more chance. I had not fully appreciated what you are. And somehow I was granted another chance. And so since then, I have led a much more conscious life, much more in alignment with the energetic responses and cues from my body, and really honoring that path of healing in alignment with whatever this energy needs for myself and also for those around me. So the thing I learned from that last near-death experience is the fact that the body is far more than what we realize. We are not the body. The body has its own consciousness, its own journey. But who we truly are is expressed through this physical form in this lifetime. So what I learned is that we really need to honor and respect and take supreme care of this vessel, because it is what allows us to express ourselves and do the work that we came here to do in this lifetime. So what I realized is, I'd heard the words, the house of God, and never really understood what it meant. And what I realize is that if we are all a spark of the divine, that spark is expressed through this physical form. We better look after it if we wish to do what we came here to serve for this lifetime. And what it is that we have to contribute to this world is not just for our own lives, it's actually for the highest good of all. So don't underestimate the impact that you have. You're not just a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean.